Well, hello, this is Peter Combs from Bitamount.com, Bitamount Live, and P.O. Combs Asian Art in Gloucester, Massachusetts. And today is Friday, March 18th. Spring is almost here. A couple of weeks to go until April 1st. First day of spring's the 21st. Things are getting better. It's 70 degrees here today. It's wonderful out. Sunny, no wind. And here we are, our weekly video. Take a look and see what's been going on for the last week. There's actually quite a lot going on right now. The auction houses down in New York are getting ready for the sales next week. We uploaded this week several more catalogs to the reference section on Bitamount. And if you come over to here, you know, everybody knows how to find it, right? You go to the home page, scroll down to the red box, click that, brings you over here. And we've added the two more catalogs this week that are in here. For some reason, the Japanese catalog at Christie's uploaded twice. We'll get rid of one of them, so don't be confused by it. But in this sale is the Utterberg collection of Zen Buddhist scrolls and early Japanese paintings, which is quite exceptional. We'll get to them in a minute. And this is the catalog. You may remember this catalog. The sculpture on the cover here is this contemporary Japanese wooden sculpture by Gizan. And these have done very well over the last couple of years. I think they've sold 2 or 3 of them. And they do very, very well. And there's another one in the March 22nd sale that's taking place just in about 4 days. Also, the Sotheby's Important Chinese Works of Art catalog is up now. And in it are some really good lots, including especially the cover lot and the back lot. And there's a piece of porcelain in there that could bring a lot of money. It could do extremely well. And we're going to take a look at that in just a minute also. Alrighty. One of the things I wanted to mention coming up at Sotheby's in the an auction they've got titled "A Journey Through China's History," and it's the Dr. Quan collection of porcelain and art. He was an avid collector. He collected things from every period, jades, bronzes, porcelains, all of it. And Sotheby's is handling a big part. I don't know if it's the entire collection, but a lot of it takes place in about 4 days. And in it are things like this extremely attractive Qianlong period, done in sort of in the export style, but meant for the court. Meant for the done to sort of in the taste that was approved of by the emperor. Is this beautifully decorated vase. It's got scenes on both sides, and this one you see this lovely moon gate in the background, the oval window, and then a gate in the distance, and an attendant serving wine and so forth. Beautifully done, gilded on top and bottom, scroll work everywhere. It's 9 inches tall, has a $40,000 to $60,000 estimate. And I'd be very curious to see how this does. This could do very, very well. It hasn't been sold on the market since the 1960s. And it's been in the Dr. Kwan's collection since apparently about 1968 onward. And we'll see how this does. There's a good write-up on it. It's a good catalog note. The painting style and subject matter of the present vase also relates to a special group of wares that were influenced by European enameled pieces which are imported to the court, often as tribute to the emperor. And there's a good explanation on it. And there's a lot to do with the influence that the Jesuits and Giuseppe Castiglione and that style of painting that were introduced by Europeans to the Chinese that they became so fond of. And you can read up on it. It's an interesting story. And also in the sale is this, a pair of these wonderful Qianlong Marken period incense burners. These are spectacular. Now you may remember a number of months ago there was maybe it was a year ago at this point, another pair of these turned up that had belonged to a British guy. It was a retired officer, I believe. And they're virtually identical, are very, very similar. and they brought several $100,000, as I recall. So it'll be interesting to see if these do just as well. I suspect they will. They're absolutely beautiful, beautifully done, and they're good size. They're 15 inches in diameter, so they have some real size to them. And it's interesting because the MFA in Boston has a set of bronzes, complete, like a garniture set of these with vases alternating with the incense burners in their collection. I remember looking at it a couple of years ago. It was really before the pandemic struck, when you could go to museums freely. They had them out, and they were really, really wonderful. These are deeply cast, as you can see, and very crisply done all the way through. But beautiful, beautiful pair of bronzes. And I wouldn't be surprised if they went through the estimate. The estimate's $100,000 to $150,000, and I wouldn't be surprised if they went up well over 200. All right, and then there's this wonderful late Shang to Anyang period, 12th century BC wine vessel. Very nicely done. It's called a Fang Yi, based on the shape. And as you can see, this one has an incredible surface on it. It's just absolutely, verdigreed from burial all over it. Just pure age, beautiful, beautiful surface, undisturbed surface, which is so important to early bronze collectors. It makes all the difference in the world. And this one has a fairly significant history. It's been in the Quan collection for quite some time, again since the 60s or so. And there's a bit written about it. Michel Budelet in his book, Le Bronze of the Archaic Bronzes of China, and Rose Kerr wrote about them and so forth. There's a lot done, and then there's a nice write-up here at the bottom by Regina Crowell on this particular bronze, and it's worth reading. I always say it, but whenever the experts they have at these auction houses write these papers, whether it's Regina Crowell or any of Bob Mowry, take the time to read them. They're extremely informative. They really compact a lot of information into a small amount of space. They don't take long time to go through, and they give you a much deeper understanding of the piece, its history, how it came to be, how it relates to other bronzes, in this case, in other collections, and where similar examples can be found and researched. And Didier, whose catalogs we have over on the reference section and so forth. So it's a good read all the way through, and I'll be interested to see how this does. This is a very rare bird. It's estimated at $400,000 to $600,000. But the last one that went through, as I recall, there was a similar example a few years ago that turned up. That came out of a Japanese collection, and as I recall, it brought about $700,000. So we'll see how accurate this estimate is. And then on to this. This is a favorite among a lot of people right now on this sale that's coming up. They actually, I think Sotheby's did a little video on this. Is a fantastically rare Yuan to early Ming Dynasty hibiscus dish. And this is an unusual one for a lot of reasons. One of them is how deeply carved this thing is, and how well defined it is. And it's got 3 hibiscus on it. Hibiscuses were a popular flower in China, but they weren't often depicted in artwork. And when they were typically depicted singularly with just one. But this particular dish, this is also a large piece of lacquer for the period. It is over 10 inches in diameter. It's in absolutely splendid condition all the way around. There's nothing to complain about with this dish at all. It's absolutely beautiful. And the carving, the polish, the finish, the depth, all of it is just absolutely great. And it's a very rare thing all the way around. A lot of people are talking about it. It's got an estimate of $100,000 to $150,000, and there's a lot of curiosity about what this is going to bring. And it's been it was last sold at Christie's in 1965. That was the last time this thing was in an auction, almost 50 years ago. But we'll see how this does. This is a real rare piece of Chinese lacquer. Very, very rare. Beautiful, beautiful thing. God. And over to this, another a Zun, Western Zhao period, early Western Zhao Zun vase that's inscribed. The interior of it is completely inscribed down in here, and there's an explanation of it's a poem, and it's all in the write up at the bottom what the poem is. It's got an exhibition history. This is a pretty well-known piece of bronze among the collector community. It had been passed through C.T. Liu as a dealer, and then Frank Caro, who was the successor to C.T. Liu, and so on. So there's a long history of ownership here, and it was sold at Sotheby's last on September 14th, 2011, lot number 298. And it's estimated at $400,000 to $600,000. So it's been off the market for over 10 years. It might do quite well. It's got a good history, good patina, and it's attractive. But this is something that's got another thing, like the lacquer bowl that has a lot of people talking, is this Xuande period dice bowl with dragons and waves on it. This is a very rare type of bowl. The Xuande emperor, like the Yongle emperor, was a big fan of Chinese porcelain. He was a big fan of the kilns. He was always sending couriers up to the imperial kilns to keep them organized. And he wasn't an emperor for that long, but he was a very popular emperor. And it was during a very prosperous period. So he was a big patron of the arts, and I was a big support of innovations at the kilns, and he was very much hands-on when it came to what they were making. And this particular type of bowl, these dice bowls as they're called, were made in fairly limited numbers. There weren't many of these around. This one has been in the same collection. It belonged to this fellow here, the Friedman brothers. Let's see, I think they bought it back in the 1920s and has been on the market since. But anyway, there's a long write-up, and it explains what dice balls were for throwing dice into them, and they were made very thick. They had fairly thick walls, so they could withstand the use. So when you look at dice balls, if you come to one, the Metropolitan Museum has one. The Palace Museum in Taiwan and in Beijing, the Palace Museums each have at least one. I think one of them might have, the one in Beijing I think might have two of them. And if you examine them, you'll notice they often have wear to the interior, and it's because they were used. They were used extensively, but they tend to be rather heavy, very thick, and pretty good size. I think this thing is about 10 inches in diameter, and the estimate on it is. What's the estimate here? 600,000 to 800,000 US, 10 3/8 inches in diameter, and it could go well over that. Xuande Marken period dice bowls don't turn up very often, and when they do, they get an awful lot of attention, and there's a lot of money out there right now trying to do this. Let's see. Collection of Leon and Max Friedman, acquired in China between 1920 and the 1940s, and has been in the family ever since. It's been, as they say, and thence by descent. And they've decided, the descendants have decided it's time to sell this, and it could bring, $1 million to $1.6 million if the right people line up for it, and world events aren't muddying the waters too much to keep people from giving their attention to it. And as I said, these are sales that are taking place in New York. So the Chinese buyers, mainland buyers right now, have to do a little bit of struggling, a little extra work to get their money out of the country so they can pay their auction bills, because there's some difficulty with that right now. All right, now on to this, the Utterberg collection. This is the collection, part of it. This isn't the whole sale, but there's 28 scrolls in here that came from the collection of David and Nada Utterberg. And David Utterberg was an American guy. He was a very, very successful businessman. He was in the medical field. He invented things, equipment, and things tied in particular to kidney research and tools and equipment and so forth. He was fantastically successful. He became a collector back in the early 60s, 70s, and collected for about 50 years. And he was a real student of the stuff, and he was a quiet collector. Not a lot of people knew him. He went around, he shopped in the very, very best places. He was doing a lot of business in Japan. That's where he became interested in this, and in particular with Zen Buddhism and Zen Buddhist art. And he bought a number of absolutely superb scrolls. absolutely superb. Early ones. He was in particular fond of scrolls from Japan and Korea, made from the 13th, 14th century up to the 17th century, and a couple in the early 18th century. But that was sort of his window. And there were a few scrolls in here that are really exceptional that he has, and they're worth studying up on. One of them is this. It's by it's supposed to be anonymous, of Moroku Bosatsu, the Bodhisattva, and at the top of it there is an inscription that's been added. And if you scroll down here, it's rather interesting. The inscription on the top is believed to be by the Emperor Fushimi, who reigned from 1287 to 1298 A.D. And he was also a known calligrapher. And they studied the calligraphy that's been added to this, and because it's not uncommon for people to have scrolls, and they'll have an emperor, somebody will write some script and they'll have it added to the scroll. The Qinlong emperor did it all the time. He added colophons to existing scrolls, and the Fushimi emperor apparently did the same thing. And they've studied his calligraphy so much because he was known for doing a lot of writing, and they found the calligraphy on here to be completely consistent with his hand, and believe that this script up here was written by the emperor and then added to this absolutely spectacular Bosatsu scroll. It's estimated at $300,000 to $400,000, and it's a real rarity. It's a fantastic rarity. It's beautifully done, and I'm very curious to see how these do. And this is another one, the Amida Triad. That's also from this is from the late 13th century. Great quality, $400,000 to $500,000. This sort of this use of silver and gold on silk and so forth. So there's a bit of wear to it, but an absolutely beautiful piece of work. Absolutely splendid. And apparently Mr. Utterberg was a big researcher. He used to do all of his own research. I was reading a story about him. They said his reference library had over 7,000 books in it, 7,000 volumes on I guess predominantly Japanese and Korean and Chinese art. But I think his main focus seems to have been Japan, and then Korea, then China. And he was a big fan of calligraphy. He collected calligraphy. Even though he couldn't read it, he collected it based on the stylistic aspects of it. All right. So, and as with the others, there's a good write-up on this, and you can bone up on that if you want. And then there's this. This is my favorite painting in the whole sale. It's not the most expensive. It's up there, but it's by Bonpo. And this is an absolutely wonderful pen and ink Zen type of drawing. He was a Zen Buddhist monk who was appointed to run a number of monasteries. He was a well-known patron of the arts himself, a poet, and ink painter. And I just absolutely love this painting of orchids. It's absolutely beautiful, light touch, but great use and understanding of negative space. Calligraphy neatly done in the upper left-hand corner, and a good running hand script. And all of these beautiful aspects, the way this is constructed. It almost has a modern look to it. It's so beautifully, simply done. Simple and elegant. Wonderful example. It's estimated at $200,000 to $300,000. It's not an inconsequential sum of money. And they have all of his information down here. And this was exhibited apparently in London as part of a private collection that they had. And there's a long explanation here about Bonpo. He was a Zen monk during the first quarter of the 15th century, and between 1405 and 1409, he became the abbot of the Kyoto monastery, the Kennin-ji, Jai. And in 1413, he was made the abbot of the Nanzenji. It was another very influential Zen temple in the mountains of Kyoto. So the artist was not only a highly accomplished artist, highly regarded for his art, but he was a very influential Zen monk, which makes this painting in particular interesting, I think. So that's some of the stuff. That's just some of the stuff that's coming up. over at the majors down in New York next week. And we'll cover the prices. We'll see how they did. We'll find out what's hot and what's not. And it's overall, there's a pretty interesting, there's the sale across the board, the sales across the boards aren't powerful with major lots. But sprinkled in, you have things like the Utterberg collection here. You've got that wonderful dice bowl. There's some very fine bronzes turning up. Beautiful piece of lacquer. Some real strong pieces that are being, I think, they seem to be modestly estimated because the political waters around the world right now being what they are, I don't think they want to oversell it and then have to make apologies to their clients. So I think they're telling them right up front, we think you'll do very well. I think this is probably how the conversation is going. But, right now we've got some turmoil, so we want to be a little conservative on our estimates. And I think in general, people understand that, and a lot of them have gone along with it. So there we are. Now, hovering around here and getting over to what happened on eBay last week. Let's take a look. There were a number of lots that sold, did quite well. Included in is this lot of 5 dishes, Kangxi plates from Ceramics and Collectibles guys over in the Netherlands. Sold for $910, which seems reasonable. Roughly $200 a piece. It's a fairly well-known pattern. This pattern is not a rare pattern, but it's a nice form. The plates are molded. They have these nice little lotus lappets and the cavettos running around the edge, around the sides, dividing the outer border and the inner border. And they overall look to be in pretty good shape. There might be a few nicks and frits and whatnot. Well, it says rim fritting, and also one of them had a hairline, but that was it. And somebody got all 5 of them for $910, which I think is pretty reasonable. All right, and then moseying onto this, they also sold this was Kangxi period figure of an immortal sitting on a bisque figure sitting on a plinth, and nicely done. Apparently there was a little bit of repair, I guess, to the hair on top of the head or something, and maybe a finger or two. But nice aubergine ground, nice femi-vert decoration. Looks like a good little figure, and I think this was a very reasonable price, $251. I don't think that's a bad price at all. I think that was a very fair price. I think if you bought that and you're a dealer, you could probably resell it and make a little bit of money on it. Let's see, what was they give the size on it? It's probably 6 or 8 inches or something. Let's see here. Size 145 millimeters tall. So that's, I hate it when they just do it in centimeters, for heaven's sakes. 10, 14, 6, about 6 inches in height. Okay, there we go. Nice looking figure though, and it went for $250. I wouldn't have been surprised if it had brought $600 to $800, but there you have it. Somebody got a good buy. And then there's this Wu Shangpu mug. And this, as everybody knows, this pattern is extremely popular. It's a nice 19th century example. Apparently the mug has had some kind of little repair to it or something. I looked at it. I couldn't see what it was, so it must have been well done. And somebody picked this up pretty reasonably, $271. I think that was a very reasonable buy when you consider last week there was a Wu Shangpu, there was a dish that was on here. There was something, oh no, it was a little cup, a little wine cup, and it brought about $900. This looks like, in relative terms, a rather good buy. I thought this would bring in the $500 to $600 range anyway, because it's not quite as fussy as the other one, but it's still very, very good, and ended up going for $271. Now, it may be the repair to the handle. People look at repairs, they can't see what the repair is, and they get nervous. They don't know, is the whole handle repaired, or is it a small repair? Do they just cover up often when they listed as having had a repair, it's just that a line developed where the handle joins the body, and they get that cleaned and they call it a repair, because it is technically, but it's a small repair. It's a little thing. It's a little thing that'll keep the handle from breaking off. So whoever bought it, I hope you checked it out, and I think it was a good buy. All right, and now on to this. This is sort of Quanzhong style circular tile. I think this was a bargain. This is a 19th century tile, nicely done. Nice rows of script and calligraphy, and you've got these 2 boys sitting sitting, a boy and an elder actually sitting outside in a landscape, a beautiful landscape scene near a mountain. It looked like they're having maybe a picnic. Oh, there's three of them. There's another kid there crouched down. I missed him. Anyway, it's a nice looking tile, and ended up selling for only $416. And in the past, we've seen these, and they typically bring more than that. So this week there were a few good buys. We'll just put it that way. And this went for $416, and I would have thought it would bring $800 to $1,200. That was my thinking on it. So maybe the prices on these things are getting a little bit softer and more favorable. And then over to this, you have this early 20th century brush pot in Famille Rose, and then this libation cup. This is not Blanc de Chine. This is done on soft paste. It's very similar to Blanc de Chine, but it's really not. It's got a soft, sort of a soft biscuit, soft paste with a nice crackle to it. Here it is, and there's a little, somebody had done inscribed down here some sort of Chinese character into the glaze the way they do. But the finish on this looks quite good. The foot rim and all that looks fine. Oh yeah, this mug had a crack in it, but that's not what you were buying. You were buying this nice soft paste Blanc de Chine type libation cup, and somebody bought this lot for $68. That's the way to do it. That was a very reasonable buy. These soft paste pieces often bring $300 or $400. And I think what happened was people maybe didn't know that they did them in this with this finish with the crackle. That may have looked at it and thought, oh, it's got crackles all over it, and that's not what they typically look like. So that's what they were going with. All right, now. Over here, the snuff bottle, the dragon snuff bottle. I just liked this. It was a nicely done bottle, late 19th century. It's got that swirly base on them. I once had a pair of Clair de Lune vases, Mei-Ping vases, that were 19th century. They had the same bottom on it. It was a style that came along in the 18th or 19th century and turns up here and there on snuff bottles and certain cylindrical form vases. And here you have it, but very nice, deep, dark cobalt on it, well potted, and it looked like it was in good shape, and it went for $414. Perfectly reasonable price. Nice looking piece. And then over here to this was some more items that were sold by the ceramics and collectibles guys, was this whole set. It looks like they're cleaning out some, this is they all look like these match. All the patterns seem to match, but you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then the dishes. So you got a bunch of bowls and dishes, and the whole lot went for $1,631, which is a very reasonable purchase, in my opinion. I think somebody will buy that and break it up and probably make a little money with it. All right, now moseying along over to this. The deer vase. This is one of these based on the larger Qinlong examples. This is a 19th century vase of the deer on a hoof-form vase, but this one is smaller than the great big ones, and it's sort of a rare, very pretty thing. It's a 19th century pot. Here, some good details of it. Beautiful quality, and rather rare for the size. This is small. Most of these are, 15, 16 inches tall, 14 inches tall, in that price range. This was only 6 centimeters in height, so it was about 4 inches in height, and it did very well. It had 66 bids, about $5,100. But if you're looking at it, scratching your head, ask yourself, when have you seen another one of a small example like this? All right, it's been a long time, and that's why, and people recognize it and they go after it. Then you have this 18th century pear-shaped vase, nice looking foot rim on it, well finished, appears to be Kangxi period, and ended up selling for $1,297. Well decorated. This was Stubbsy Wubsy had this, who's a seller over in the UK that gets good things. And that's a nice one. I like the way he took the picture too. Just took it outside, put it on a slate step, and took it, and wonderful contrast, no fancy lighting needed. Came out great, and good for him. And then on to this, the album of paintings, ink drawings. These were quite nice, and I had some inquiries from a couple of you on these. These are nice pen and ink drawings. There's a whole set of them. 19th century, beautifully done, and still in their binders, and sold for $5,500. And like I said last week, we were going to start the inquiries again this week. If you go and you want to submit something to the inquiries, you feel free to do it. There were a number of people that ignored the thing that I was going to be away and not able to do them for a while, and they sent them in anyway, which is fine as long as you don't mind waiting a little bit to get them, to get the replies. And we're all caught up now. So if you have something you want me to look at, go to the identification assistant button on the home page at bid amount and send it in, or use the preview assistant if it's an auction item, and you can just throw your links in and I'll go look at it for you. All right, now, and this brought $5,500, but I love these paintings. There were 10 of them, so $500 a piece. I think that's pretty reasonable. All right, and now over here to this was this Yongchen period under tray that would probably went to a teapot, and nicely done relief work. A little bit of wear around here on the edge, but not bad. And this form, these lobed dishes with these enamels were made to go with similarly decorated teapots as sets. And here's the under tray. And somebody picked this beautiful little piece of porcelain up, Yongchen, not Qinlong, I think it's Yongchen. I think they're a little off. I think it's older than the seller thought. $210. Nicely done. And also this 18th century Chinese export blue and white garniture vase. And this would have been paired up with another vase of virtually identical form, a mate to it, with a lid. And it would have had maybe a couple of beaker vases, 3 beaker vases with it, and they form a garniture. And all these sets often, not always, but often they get broken up, and within families, somebody gets one, somebody gets the other one, so forth. But at any rate, this was a nice one. And it ended up selling for $1,211. All right, and it looks to be like it was around 10 or so inches tall. All right, and then on to this, the silk embroidery roundel of the dragon. This was on the newsletter page last week. There's been a lot of interest in these. A couple of them were in one of the big auction houses not long ago. I think Sotheby's had them, 2 of them. And they both brought about the same money. This one brought $4,330. All right, now there's a couple more of those coming up that are going to close this week that'll be in the upcoming newsletter page. Let's see here. Get this thing to load properly. There we go. And we'll get to them in a minute. They're in here. But this is just some of the things that'll be in this week's newsletter. If you go check it out this weekend on Bidamount. One of them is this, a very nice 18th century Qinlong ewer with the serpent, nice serpent handle on it here. Nicely decorated. Looked like it's in pretty good shape. Some wear to the gilding here and there. You can notice the gilding's a little thin there. But it's a fairly rare form. These handled pots don't turn up very often. And it's already up to $1,221. It closes on Sunday. And it'll probably go another $300 or $400, I suspect. And then similar to that is this, a pair of these 18th century export vases made around the same period as the previous one. And these are the relief work examples. They did these with and without relief work at the top up in here. Some of them were done and just left smooth and then decorated. And others, they applied additional porcelain and sculpted relief areas on top and then enameled them. All right, so these are a little bit fancier than the typical examples. So they're already up to $1,000, and they close on Sunday. So we'll see how they do. And I suspect they'll go a little more. These aren't great big ones. They're only about 9 inches tall, but they're nice quality. And it's always about the quality first. And then on to this they've got it listed as an 18th century Cantonese export opium box with a cover. This is ivory. So if you live in a country where you might get in trouble for buying and having ivory shipped in, stay away from this because you might get yourself in trouble. But very strong trigger lines all over the bottom and so forth. And I don't think this is one of those mammoth tusk copies. This looks like an old one to me. The carving looks good. All right, because they do make knockoffs of these. There's a particular form of these ivory carvings, and it's of a seated Lohan, sort of squatting down with his robes up, and he's a little tiny carving. And about 10 or 15 years ago, somebody was making these by the boatload because they were turning up at auctions all over the United States all at once. Be one and there was. I went to an auction in Vermont. There was one up there. There was another auction I remember over in Maine that had one. They were all identical and they were all modern, and they were made out of mammoth tusks typically. And but somebody was making these little seated figures, and they were all turning up as Ming. And they were everywhere. Whenever you see things like that happening in unison, you know that somebody's mass producing and sprinkling them into auctions all around the country to make a few bucks. Avoid them. But this one looks pretty good, I think. This is one of the other rondelles that's ending in a couple of days. This seller is, what's the seller's name? A strange name. The Nurse Flipper. I don't know what that means, but at any rate, this is a nice late Qing example. A little bit of pink in it and so forth. A green dragon. It's up to $910. And they have this. There's another one from that same seller. I meant to mention. They're both the Browndells will be in the newsletter, and they're very, very similar. I think the other one is only up to about $500 or $600. But they have it listed as Kangxi period. I don't think they're Kangxi. I just think they're 19th century, but they're nice quality. All right, because they got Famille Rose, they got pink in it, and the Chinese didn't do pink silk in the Kangxi period typically. So just something to know. Anyway, here we are. And then on to this. This is a very nice piece of Meiji period Amari that's turning up. The seller is Merosemph. I don't know them. Merosemph. But anyway, this is a nice one. It's good size. I think it's 14 inches in diameter. Oh, no. This is a little one. 7 inches in diameter. Okay, never mind. There was a bigger one I saw this week, but nice pattern, nice use of gilding. If you're a Japanese Amari collector, this is something that's pretty good. It's signed on the back. You can look it up, who made it. Here's a picture of the back of it, decorated all the way around, but good quality, very nice quality, and rather striking in appearance. So see what it's only up to. Let's see here. What is it? It's got a few bids. It's up to $39. Ought to sell for $100, $125, something like that. But it's a very, very pretty, very festive looking piece of Amari. And I like it. I like it, even though it's not. I thought it was bigger. Initially, I thought it was one of these 14-inch ones because I'd seen a 14-inch one. I think it's on the global member pages. There's a couple of big Amari charges over there. Now that I think of it. All right. So anyway, that's all the stuff that's going on. If you enjoy the videos, as always, I don't always answer all the comments, but I read them all, and I enjoy hearing what everybody has to say. And as you know, we if you make suggestions, we try to adopt them into the videos each week. And I was hoping to do another video this week. I didn't quite get to it, but I've got one that I'm doing, a new one I'm going to be doing on fakes, because there's a trend coming up of using the names of dead Chinese generals, and I don't know where this is coming from, but it's pretty hilarious. And there's a sale coming up down in Florida this week from Charlotte's, and they're using the name of a dead Romanian or Bulgarian scientist who died before a couple of the artists that they claim he owned even started painting. So it's sort of interesting. And I'm going to go through them. It's an interesting video because they're getting more and more elaborate in how they construct fake provenance for artwork. And as always, none of the state's auction regulators care for they just don't care. So it's just all fraud. I'm going to go through and I'm going to show you some really glaring examples of fairly complex but fake provenance that these auction houses are putting together to try to get these pictures and so forth, paintings and bronzes and whatnot sold. It's absolutely ridiculous. All right. Have a great weekend. A beautiful day around here. Doing okay. And subscribe if you haven't yet so far. Give us a thumbs up. Leave a comment. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.